The morning light catches the ocean spray just right, turning it into diamonds against the rocks below my cottage. I'm 73 years old, sitting on a porch I own outright, drinking coffee from a mug that says "Nevertheless," she persisted. Dorothy gave it to me for my birthday last month, along with a wink and a knowing smile. 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined this life. 3 years ago, I was living in what I believed was harmony with my son and his wife, cooking family dinners in a kitchen that smelled of pot roast and false promises. I thought I was home. I thought I was loved. I thought I was safe. I was wrong about all three. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when I still believed that family meant something unbreakable. My husband Richard died 4 years ago. Lung cancer took him in 6 brutal months, turning the man who'd once filled rooms with his laughter into a shadow who could barely whisper. We'd had our problems, his drinking, his temper, the way he'd shut down emotionally for years, but at the end I held his hand and told him I forgave him for everything. I'm not sure he heard me. The house we'd shared for 30 years felt enormous after he was gone. Every room echoed. Every corner held memories I wasn't ready to face. I'd stand in the kitchen where I'd taught our son Alistair to make pancakes, and the silence would press against my chest until I couldn't breathe. Alistair noticed. Of course he did. He'd always been perceptive, even as a boy. After Richard left us when Alistair was 12, before the reconciliation, before the cancer, before the end, I'd raised him alone. 2 jobs, night classes, sacrificing everything so he could have opportunities I'd never dreamed of. Stanford, a career in tech, a life I was proud of. "Mom," he said one Sunday over lunch, 6 months after Richard's funeral, "you shouldn't be alone in that big house. Why don't you come live with Philippa and me?" Philippa, his wife of 3 years, smiled warmly across the table. She was beautiful in that polished, professional way, sharp bob, designer glasses, the kind of confidence that comes from corner offices and quarterly bonuses. "We'd love to have you, Honora. Really. The house we're looking at has plenty of space." "Looking at?" I'd asked. "We found a place in Santa Cruz," Alistair explained, excitement lighting his face. "It's perfect. 4 bedrooms, ocean views, great neighborhood. But the mortgage is steep, and with Philippa's student loans..." He didn't have to finish. I understood. They needed help. "What if," I said slowly, "I sold my house and bought it? You could live there, pay me rent, and when your finances improve, we'll transfer the deed. You get your dream home. I get to live near my son. Everyone wins." The relief on their faces was palpable. Alistair hugged me so tight I felt my ribs protest. "Mom, are you sure? That's incredibly generous." "You're my son. Of course I'm sure." 3 weeks later, I stood in the living room of what the realtor called Pembroke Manor. I'd asked them to keep the family name on the property, and felt something like hope for the first time since Richard died. The house was beautiful. Craftsman style, built in the 20s, with original hardwood floors and windows that framed the Pacific like paintings. I paid $380,000, cash, from the sale of my old house and Richard's life insurance. The deed went in my name. Just temporarily, we agreed. Just until Alistair and Philippa's credit scores improved and they could refinance. "We'll pay you $2,200 a month," Alistair promised. "It's not much, but..." "It's fine," I assured him. I knew market rent was closer to $4,500, but they were family. We didn't need formal contracts or legal complications. We trusted each other. That was my first mistake. The first year was good. Better than good. It was everything I'd hoped for. I had my own room, painted soft yellow with white trim. I'd wake to the sound of the ocean and make coffee before Alistair and Philippa left for work. We'd have breakfast together on Sundays. I'd cook the pot roast Alistair loved, the one I'd made every birthday since he was 8. Philippa would bring home wine and tell stories about her marketing campaigns. We'd laugh. I gardened. The backyard became my sanctuary. Roses, lavender, a small vegetable patch. I'd spend hours with my hands in the soil, coaxing beauty from the earth. Richard and I had gardened together in our early years before the drinking got bad. Working the earth again felt like reclaiming something I'd lost. I joined a knitting circle. Every Thursday, 6 women would gather in our living room. My living room, I suppose, though I never corrected anyone who called it Alistair and Philippa's place. We'd drink tea and work on blankets for the homeless shelter. Dorothy became my closest friend, a retired social worker with steel gray hair and the kind of laugh that made you want to confess your secrets. "You seem happy, Nora," she said one afternoon, using the nickname only my oldest friends knew. "I am," I told her, and meant it. But things were shifting beneath the surface. Small things. So small I told myself I was being oversensitive. Philippa started reorganizing the kitchen after I cooked. "Just putting things back in my system," she'd say, moving the spices I'd alphabetized into some arrangement only she understood. When I'd reach for the paprika, I'd find it had migrated 3 cabinets over. She'd sigh heavily when I'd ask about her day, as if my interest was an exhausting burden rather than genuine care. When I mentioned having my knitting circle over, she'd gotten quiet. "Actually, Honora, I'd prefer if your friends didn't come here. I work from home sometimes. I need my space to be mine." Mine. That word hung in the air like smoke. "Of course," I'd said, smiling to cover the sting. "We can meet at Dorothy's." Alistair had looked uncomfortable but said nothing. That became his default expression, uncomfortable but silent. The son who'd once stood up to bullies, who'd argued passionately for justice in his high school debate club, had somehow learned the art of looking away. By the second year, the temperature had dropped noticeably. Philippa stopped joining us for Sunday breakfasts, claiming she needed to go to the gym. She'd make pointed comments about the old people smell when I wore my favorite perfume, Chanel No. 5, which Richard had given me on our 10th anniversary. "Maybe try something lighter," she'd suggest, wrinkling her nose. "Something more age-appropriate." I was 69 years old. What exactly was age-appropriate supposed to mean? I started staying in my room more, reading, doing crossword puzzles, making myself small and quiet and unobtrusive. The garden became my only real refuge, but even there I'd sometimes catch Philippa watching me through the kitchen window, her expression unreadable. One day I came home from the grocery store to find her on the phone in the hallway. She didn't see me, and I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but her voice carried. "I'm telling you, Susan, it's suffocating. I can't breathe in my own home. She's always there, always hovering, always existing." A pause. I know. Alistair thinks I'm being unreasonable, but he doesn't get it. It's not his mother who's—" She turned and saw me. Her face transformed instantly into a smile. "Hey, Susan, I'll call you back." I pretended I hadn't heard. We both pretended. The performance of family harmony continued, even as the foundation crumbled. The breaking point came on Alistair's 45th birthday. I wanted to do something special. He'd been working such long hours at his startup, some educational technology platform that was always 6 months from either breakthrough or bankruptcy. He looked exhausted, thin, older than his years. I thought a small party might lift his spirits. I didn't ask Philippa. That was my mistake. Or maybe it was intentional sabotage by my subconscious. Either way, I invited his college roommate, a few neighbors, my knitting circle. I made his favorite meal, pot roast with those crispy potatoes he'd loved since childhood, chocolate cake from scratch. I hung streamers and balloons in the living room. When Philippa came home 2 hours early, her face went white, then red. "What is this?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "A birthday surprise for Alistair," I said, suddenly aware of how the room must look to her, full of people she hadn't invited, in a space she considered hers. "You did this without asking me." It wasn't a question. "I wanted to surprise both of you." "This is my house." The words came out sharp, cutting. Everyone in the room went silent. "I didn't consent to this invasion. These people," she gestured at my knitting circle, at Alistair's friends, "they have no right to be here." "Philippa, honey," I started. "Don't honey me. You're not my mother. You don't get to make decisions about my space, my home, my life." Alistair appeared in the doorway, briefcase still in hand. He took in the scene. The decorations, the guests, his wife's fury, my humiliation. "What's going on?" he asked, though he must have known. "Your mother," Philippa said, voice dripping with disdain, "threw a party in our house without asking." He looked at me. I waited for him to say something, anything, to remind her that I just wanted to celebrate his birthday, to acknowledge that this was technically my house too. "I'm sorry, everyone," he said instead. "I think we need some family time. Maybe we could reschedule?" The guests left in awkward silence. Dorothy squeezed my hand on her way out, her expression saying everything words couldn't. When they were gone, I turned to apologize, but Philippa had already disappeared into the bedroom. Alistair followed without a word to me. I cleaned up alone, taking down streamers, wrapping up the untouched pot roast, throwing away the cake. In the quiet house, I could hear their voices through the walls. "She acts like she owns the place," Philippa said. If only she'd known. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my yellow room with its white trim and listened to the ocean and wondered when exactly I'd become a guest in my own house. When had helping my son become a prison sentence? When had love become something I had to apologize for? The answer, I realized as dawn broke, was that it had been gradual. Death by 1,000 cuts. Each small concession, each swallowed hurt, each moment of making myself smaller had led here, to a birthday party where I was the villain for celebrating my own child. Something had to change. I just didn't know that the change would come with an ultimatum I never saw coming, delivered on a Tuesday evening 3 weeks later, over a pot roast I'd spent all afternoon preparing. The pot roast was almost ready. I could smell it through the whole house, that rich, savory aroma of beef and vegetables that had always meant comfort, meant home, meant family. I'd started it at noon, letting it cook low and slow the way Alistair liked it, the way I'd made it for him since he was 8 years old and told me it was magic. I was setting the table when Philippa came home. I heard her car first, that aggressive rumble of her BMW as she pulled into the driveway too fast. Then the front door opened and closed with more force than necessary. Her heels clicked against the hardwood like gunshots. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her work clothes, charcoal suit, cream blouse, hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Her face was flushed, whether from anger or wine or both, I couldn't tell. "We need to talk," she announced, dropping her bag on the counter with a thud that made the fruit bowl rattle. "Of course, dear." I turned down the stove, wiped my hands on my apron. "What's wrong?" She crossed her arms. "I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" "This. Living with you. It's suffocating. I never have privacy. You're always here, always hovering, always making this feel like your home instead of ours." The words hit like physical blows. "Jennifer, I never meant to." "I don't care what you meant." Her eyes were cold, calculating. "Michael needs to choose. It's either you or me. One of us has to go." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The kitchen tilted slightly, and I gripped the counter to steady myself. "You're asking my son to choose between his wife and his mother?" "I'm not asking. I'm telling. This situation ends today. Either you leave or I do. And if I leave, our marriage goes with me." I looked past her to where Alistair had appeared in the doorway. My son, my baby boy. The child I'd rocked through nightmares. The teenager I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college. The man I'd sold my home to help. "Alistair?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the floor, at the wall, anywhere but at me. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "Mom, He started, stopped, cleared his throat. His face was pale, stricken. "Philippa is my wife. I have to put my marriage first. That's what Dad would have wanted." The irony of it nearly made me laugh. Richard, who'd abandoned us when Alistair was 12, who'd only come back years later when he was dying and needed someone to forgive him. That Richard. That's who Alistair was invoking. "Your father left us," I said quietly. "I raised you alone. I worked 2 jobs while you were in school. I skipped meals so you could have new shoes. I postponed my own dreams so you could chase yours. And now you're telling me that he—" "I know what you did, Mom." Alistair's voice cracked. I know what you sacrificed, and I'm grateful. But that doesn't mean I can't live like this anymore either. The tension, the fighting, the way you two look at each other. It's killing me. I'm not fighting with anyone. I'm just existing. Is that such a crime? Philippa laughed, sharp and bitter. You don't just exist, Honora. You occupy. Every room, every conversation, every moment. Do you have any idea what it's like to feel like a guest in your own home? The words were so perfectly ironically backwards that I almost told her right then. Almost pulled out the deed and showed her exactly whose home this really was. But something held me back. Some instinct for self-preservation, or maybe just shock. I've already looked at senior living communities, Philippa continued, her voice businesslike now that she'd won. There's a place called Silver Pines. Very nice. Lots of activities. They have openings. We'll help you move this weekend. Silver Pines. I knew that place. Mrs. Kowalski from church had gone there 2 years ago. She'd lasted 6 months before dying of what the doctors called heart failure, but I knew was loneliness. They served dinner at 4:30, locked the doors at 9, treated grown adults like children who needed managing. No, I heard myself say. Philippa blinked. Excuse me? No, I won't be going to Silver Pines. I won't be going anywhere this weekend. I straightened, feeling something cold and hard settle into my chest. But I will leave tonight. Mom, you don't have to, Alistair started. Yes, I interrupted, looking at him directly for the first time. I do. You've made your choice very clear, and I've made mine. I untied my apron, folded it carefully, placed it on the counter next to the pot roast neither of them would eat. Then I walked to my room, my yellow room with the white trim and the view of the garden I'd planted, and began to pack. It took me 4 hours to reduce 72 years of life into 2 suitcases and 3 boxes. I took my clothes, my books, my photo albums, Richard's watch, which I'd worn on a chain around my neck since he died, my grandmother's quilt, the leather folder from my desk drawer, the one with property documents I barely remembered. I left behind the curtains I'd bought, the kitchen gadgets I'd accumulated, the espresso machine I'd purchased for Alistair's birthday 2 years ago. I left the garden. Alistair came to the doorway twice while I packed. Both times he opened his mouth to speak. Both times nothing came out. The second time I saw tears on his face, but he didn't wipe them away. He just stood there, crying silently, doing nothing. Philippa never appeared at all. At 11:30 p.m., I carried my suitcases down the stairs. The house was dark except for a light under their bedroom door. I could hear Philippa's voice, muffled but triumphant. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. I knew celebration when I heard it. I loaded my car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic that had never let me down, and took one last look at the house. Pembroke Manor, the Craftsman with its original windows and hardwood floors, the garden where I'd planted roses and lavender, the porch where I'd sat on Sunday mornings, drinking coffee and watching the ocean. My house, my money, my name on the deed. And they'd just kicked me out of it. I got in my car and drove north on Highway 101, hands trembling on the steering wheel, vision blurred with tears I wouldn't let fall until I was miles away. The extended stay America off Highway 101 was the kind of place people went when their lives had fallen apart. Divorcees, business travelers too broke for real hotels, women who'd been expelled from their own homes by sons who'd chosen their wives over the mothers who'd raised them. The night clerk barely looked up when I checked in. How long? A week, I said, though I had no idea if that was true. Room 237, second floor, end of the hall. Checkouts at 11. The room smelled like industrial cleaner and defeat. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige bedspread. A landscape painting so generic it could have been anywhere or nowhere. A TV bolted to the dresser. A kitchenette with a microwave and mini-fridge. I sat on the bed, firm to the point of hardness, and stared at my suitcases. Everything I owned in the world that mattered, reduced to luggage you could carry. That's when the tears came. Not gentle crying, but the kind of sobbing that comes from somewhere deep and primal. The kind that leaves you gasping, that makes your chest hurt, that empties you out until you're hollow. I cried for the son I'd lost, for the relationship I'd believed was real but apparently never was, for the years I'd sacrificed that meant nothing in the end, for the home I'd given up, twice now, for the loneliness that stretched ahead of me like a desert. I cried until I had nothing left. Then I opened the leather folder. The document on top was the property deed. I'd looked at it when I first purchased the house 5 years ago, but not since. Now, in the harsh light of the hotel lamp, I read every word. Grant deed property address, 8147 Cliff Drive, Santa Cruz, CA 95060, grantor, Pacific Coast Realty. Trust grantee Honora Margaret Pembroke, purchase price $380,000, my name, only my name, sole owner. Beneath it was the title insurance policy, active, current, naming me as the insured party. Property tax bills, all in my name, all paid by me. And then, tucked at the back, something I'd forgotten. An unsigned quitclaim deed transfer form. It was dated 2 years ago, filled out in Alistair's careful handwriting. Transfer of property from Honora Margaret Pembroke. Transfer of property to Alistair James Pembroke and Philippa Rose Pembroke. Consideration, love and affection. There was a post-it note stuck to the top. Mom, sign this when you're ready. No rush. Love, A. I stared at it for a long time. Alistair had tried. He'd prepared the paperwork, had tried to formalize what we'd agreed on, and I had never signed it. Why? I'd told myself I kept forgetting, that there was always next week, next month, when things were less busy. But sitting in that hotel room at 1 a.m, I forced myself to face the truth. I hadn't signed it because part of me, some deep fearful part, knew that ownership was the only leverage I had. After Richard left, I'd learned that love wasn't enough, that promises broke, that the only security was what you could hold in your own name. And so I'd held on to the house, even as I told myself it was temporary, even as I believed we were family and such things didn't matter. Had I been manipulative? Had I unconsciously kept control because I feared being disposable? The thought made me sick. But then I remembered Philippa's face tonight, the coldness in her eyes, the way she'd issued her ultimatum with all the warmth of a landlord serving eviction papers, the way Alistair had stood there, silent, choosing her without hesitation. If I'd signed that deed 2 years ago, where would I be tonight? Still in that hotel, but with no options, no leverage, no way to fight back. They'd have the house, and I'd have nothing but the knowledge that I'd trusted people who didn't deserve it. Maybe my subconscious had been smarter than I'd given it credit for. I pulled out my laptop, thank God I'd packed it, and opened a search engine. My hands shook as I typed, Real estate attorney, Santa Cruz, California. 17 results. I opened each one, reading reviews, looking for someone tough but fair, someone who wouldn't be swayed by tears or family drama, someone who would see this as what it was, a property dispute with clear legal answers. Patricia Morrison, Esquerno, Vietnamese-American woman in her early 50s, sharp suit in her website photo, eyes that looked like they'd seen everything and been impressed by nothing. Specialty, elder abuse cases, estate disputes, property rights. Her reviews were telling. Patricia doesn't sugarcoat. She told me exactly what my chances were and what it would cost. Then she won. If you want someone to hold your hand and tell you everything will be okay, look elsewhere. If you want someone who fights like hell and wins, call Patricia. Best attorney I've ever worked with. She understood that my family was trying to take advantage of me, and she stopped them cold. I looked at the clock. 1:47 a.m. Too late to call. But I could email. I spent 20 minutes crafting the message, explaining the situation as clearly as possible. I attached scans of the deed, the tax records, the unsigned transfer form. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I lay back on the hard hotel bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in Santa Cruz, my son and his wife were sleeping in a house they believed was theirs. Tomorrow, they'd wake up and have breakfast in the kitchen I'd cooked in. They'd shower in bathrooms I'd cleaned, They'd exist in space I'd purchased with money I'd earned and saved and sacrificed for. And they thought they'd won. I felt something then that I hadn't felt in years. Not since I'd stood up to Richard's family after the divorce, when they'd tried to claim I was an unfit mother and take Alistair from me. Not since I'd worked 2 jobs and put myself through night school while raising a child alone. Not since I'd survived and thrived despite every person who told me I couldn't. I felt like a fighter. At 8:47 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Mrs. Pembroke, this is Patricia Morrison. I got your email. When can you come to my office?" Patricia Morrison's office was on the 14th floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel, and views of the bay. The receptionist led me to a corner office where Patricia sat behind a massive desk, reading through the documents I'd sent. She looked up when I entered, gestured to a chair. "Sit. Coffee?" "Please." She poured from a carafe, handed me a mug that said "Nevertheless." She persisted. I almost laughed. "Mrs. Pembroke." "Honora, please. Honora." She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Before we discuss legal strategy, I need to ask you something important. Are you absolutely certain about this? Not about winning. I can win this case. But about whether you can live with the outcome." "What do you mean?" "I've handled dozens of family property disputes, parents who sue children, siblings who fight over inheritances. I win most of them. And you know what happens? The families never recover. Even when parents win in court, they lose their relationships forever. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Alistair's face last night, the way he'd looked through me, not at me, the way he'd chosen Philippa without a moment's hesitation. "I already lost my son," I said quietly. "I'm just making it official." Patricia nodded slowly. "Okay, then let's make sure you win." She opened a legal pad, began making notes as she talked. "Here's the situation. You own the house outright. They have no lease, no rental agreement, no ownership stake. Legally, they're residents at will, which means you can terminate their residency with proper notice." "How much notice?" "In California, for residents who've been there more than a year, 60 days. We'll serve them with a formal notice to vacate. If they don't leave, we file an unlawful detainer lawsuit. That's the legal term for eviction. The courts will enforce it." "How long will it take?" "If they contest it, 3 to 4 months total. If they cooperate, they could be out in 60 days. "They won't cooperate." "No," Patricia agreed. "They won't, which means they'll hire an attorney, file motions, try to claim they have some right to the property. They'll lose, but they'll make it expensive and ugly." "How expensive?" "My retainer is $5,000. Total costs could run $15,000 to $20,000 if they fight hard. Maybe more if they file countersuits." I thought about my savings. $85,000 left after helping with their mortgage for 5 years. It would hurt, but I had enough. "Let's proceed." Patricia studied me for a long moment. "You understand they'll fight dirty? In my experience, family cases always do. They might claim you're mentally incompetent, that you have dementia, that the house was a gift with an implied promise of transfer. What do we do about that?" "We get ahead of every narrative." She pulled out a contact list. "First, cognitive assessment with Dr. Sarah Morrison. No relation, but she's the best geriatric psychiatrist in the county. 3-hour evaluation, comprehensive testing. We'll have documentation proving you're of sound mind." "When?" "I'll call her office now. We'll try to get you in this week." She made a note. "Second, we document everything, your finances, their payment history, all communications. We show that their payments were irregular, below market rate, and never formalized in any rental agreement. They paid $2,200 a month, sometimes. Market rate for that house is $4,500 minimum, so they were essentially getting a massive discount in exchange for—" She looked up. "What exactly?" "Family," I said bitterly. "They were family." "Right, we'll calculate the difference and show that you've actually subsidized them to the tune of—" She did quick math. "About $130,000 over 5 years. If anything, they owe you money." I hadn't thought of it that way. The number made me dizzy. "Third, Patricia continued. We prepare for them to attack your character. They'll paint you as vindictive, unstable, a bitter old woman who can't accept that her son has a life. We counter with character witnesses, friends, former colleagues, people who can testify to your mental state and character. I thought of Dorothy, of my knitting circle, of the teachers I'd worked with for 35 years. I can get witnesses. Good. Patricia closed her legal pad. One more thing. They might try to forge documents claiming you signed something giving them rights to the property. Has anything like that ever existed? No, just that unsigned transfer form I showed you. Keep that safe. It actually helps us, shows they knew ownership needed to be formally transferred and never completed it. She stood, extended her hand. Give me 2 days to draft the notice to vacate. We'll have it served by a professional process server. No room for them to claim they never received it. I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly, Honora. Are you ready for that? I thought about the pot roast I'd made last night, probably sitting in their refrigerator right now. The garden I'd planted, the yellow room with white trim, the life I'd built that they'd taken from me. I'm ready. 3 days later, I was unpacking in a small furnished apartment across town when Patricia called. It's done. Process server delivered the notice to both Alistair and Philippa at 6:15 this evening. They have 60 days to vacate. My heart hammered. And? According to the server, Philippa answered the door, read the notice, turned white, and started screaming. Alistair appeared, read it himself, and asked if there was a mistake. The server confirmed it was legitimate. That's when the real screaming started. From both of them? Just Philippa. Alistair apparently just stood there looking sick. The server left them arguing on the doorstep. I sat down heavily on my second-hand couch. It was real now. Irrevocable. Honora, are you there? Yes. Thank you, Patricia. They'll call you. Probably tonight. Don't answer. Let them sweat. Any communication goes through me from now on. Understood. I hung up and waited. The call came at 8:47 p.m. Alistair. I let it ring 4 times before I answered, my hand trembling. Mom, what the hell is this? His voice was panicked, furious. We got some legal notice saying we have to move out. This is insane. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, Alistair. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? This is our house. No, I said quietly. It's my house. It's always been my house. Check the deed if you don't believe me. I heard muffled sounds, Philippa's voice sharp and demanding in the background. Mom, we can't just move out. We have jobs. We have a life here. We've lived here for 5 years. You can't do this. You told me to leave. I did. Now I'm asking the same of you. That's completely different, his voice cracked. We didn't mean this is our home. You made it very clear it wasn't mine. Philippa grabbed the phone. Margaret, this is ridiculous. You can't evict your own son. What kind of mother are you? The audacity nearly made me laugh. The kind who won't be disrespected in her own home. You gave me an ultimatum, Philippa. This is my response. This is illegal. We have rights. We've been paying the mortgage. You've been making irregular payments to the owner, me, without any formal agreement. My attorney assures me this is completely legal. You have 60 days. You bitter old... She caught herself. Fine. We'll fight this. We'll get our own lawyer. You'll regret this. I regret many things, Philippa. This isn't one of them. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Adrenaline flooded my system, making my heart race and my vision swim. But beneath the fear was something else. Something fierce and bright. Liberation. The email arrived at 11:47 p.m., 3 days after the eviction notice was served. I was lying in bed, unable to sleep, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Alistair at 8, gap-toothed and grinning in his Little League uniform. Alistair at 18, solemn in his cap and gown. Alistair at 35, his arm around Philippa on their wedding day. Both of them radiating happiness I'd believed was real. The email was from an address I didn't recognize. Email protected. The subject line read, Property dispute. Urgent. I opened it. Attached was a scanned document. My hands went cold as I read. Care and Residency Agreement. This agreement entered into on September 15, 2020, between Honora Margaret Pembroke, resident, and Alistair James Pembroke and Philippa Rose Pembroke, homeowners, establishes the following terms. 1. Resident agrees to contribute to household expenses in exchange for room and board. 2. Resident acknowledges that the property located at 847 Cliff Drive, Santa Cruz, CA 95060, is owned by homeowners. 3. Resident has no ownership stake or claim to said property. 4. This agreement may be terminated by either party with 30 days' notice. At the bottom was a signature, Honora M. Pembroke. My signature, except I had never seen this document before in my life. I zoomed in on the signature. It looked like mine, the looping H, the sharp downstroke of the P, but the more I stared, the more wrong it seemed. The M in Margaret was too rounded. The baseline was too steady. My actual signature had a slight tremor these days, arthritis making my hand shake when I held a pen for too long. They'd forged my signature. I forwarded it to Patricia immediately, hands shaking so badly I could barely type the message. They sent this. I never signed it. Never even saw it before tonight. Her response came within 3 minutes. Don't respond to them. This is fraud. We may need to file a police report. This actually strengthens our case, shows consciousness of guilt. They knew they had no legitimate claim. I sat back against the headboard, staring at the forged document on my laptop screen. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was criminal. Who were these people? The son I'd raised would never forge his mother's signature. The son I'd raised would never commit fraud. But then the son I'd raised wouldn't have kicked his mother out of her own home either. Maybe I'd never really known him at all. Patricia filed a formal response to their forged document the next morning, along with a motion to expedite the eviction proceedings based on fraudulent behavior. She also filed a police report. Forgery is a felony in California, she explained during our meeting. They need to understand this isn't a game. This isn't a family squabble they can manipulate their way out of. This is serious. The police report was filed on Monday. By Wednesday afternoon, the explosion came. I was in my apartment trying to focus on a mystery novel Dorothy had lent me when someone began pounding on my door. Not knocking, pounding. Aggressive, unrelenting. The kind of sound that makes your heart race and your breath catch. I looked through the peephole. Alistair and Philippa. His face was red, twisted with an anger I'd never seen before. Philippa looked like a coiled snake, ready to strike. I didn't open the door. "Mom, open this door right now," Alistair shouted. "We need to talk. We can talk through the door, Alistair." "You called the police on us." His voice cracked. "You're trying to give us criminal records. Your own son. Forging my signature isn't a misunderstanding, Alistair. It's a crime." Philippa's voice, shrill and sharp. "We didn't forge anything. That document is real. You're just too senile to remember signing it." Senile. The word hung in the air like poison. So this was their strategy now. Not just that I was vindictive, but that I was mentally incompetent. Couldn't remember signing documents. Too old to manage my own affairs. "I'm calling building security," I said calmly, pulling out my phone. "You need to leave." "You're destroying our lives," Philippa screamed. "We'll lose everything. Our jobs, our reputation. And for what? Because I hurt your feelings? You gave me an ultimatum. You chose this." Alistair's voice changed, became pleading. "Mom, please, let's work this out. Come back. We can all sit down, talk like adults." Philippa didn't mean what she said. We were stressed. "Please don't do this to your own son." For a moment, just one moment, I wavered. That was my boy's voice, the one who'd called for me when he had nightmares, who'd brought me dandelions from the neighbor's yard and called them flowers, who'd told me I was the best mom in the world. Then Philippa spoke again. "If you don't drop this, we'll fight back. We'll tell everyone you're mentally unstable. We'll get doctors to testify you're not competent. We'll have you declared unfit to manage your own affairs. We'll take everything from you. The house, your savings, your freedom. You'll end up in a nursing home where you belong. The wavering stopped. Ice filled my veins. Security is on their way. Leave now or I'll add harassment to the police report. You'll regret this, Jennifer shrieked. We have friends, connections. We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of vindictive, cruel old woman you are. Better a cruel old woman than a doormat. Goodbye, Alistair. I heard them arguing in the hallway as they left, Philippa berating Alistair for his weak approach, for groveling to that bitch. Building security arrived minutes later. I gave them the footage from my door camera. Yes, I'd installed one the day I moved in and filed an incident report. That night, Philippa's social media campaign began. Dorothy called me at 7 a.m. the next morning. Nora, have you seen Facebook? I don't go on Facebook anymore. You need to see this. She read me Philippa's post. Heartbroken today. My mother-in-law, who we opened our home to out of love and concern, has turned on us viciously. She's making false accusations, calling the police, trying to destroy our lives. We've tried everything to help her, but her mental decline has made her paranoid and cruel. Please keep us in your thoughts as we navigate this difficult time. Elder abuse can go both ways. Family First Elder Care had heartbroken. The post had 63 comments already. People I'd known for years, former neighbors, expressing sympathy for Alistair and Philippa. So sad when aging parents become difficult. Dementia can make them paranoid and vindictive. You two are saints for trying as long as you did. But there were other comments, too. Dorothy had posted a fiery defense. I've known Honora Pembroke for 20 years. Her mind is sharper than mine, and I'm 10 years younger. Maybe ask why the devoted wife kicked her mother-in-law out of the house in the first place. Others from my knitting circle had chimed in. Susan, Honora is one of the kindest, most mentally acute people I know. Something doesn't add up here. Agnes, interesting that Philippa doesn't mention that the house is actually in Honora's name. Convenient omission. It's working, Dorothy said. People are starting to ask questions. Not enough people. I felt sick. This was what they were doing, poisoning the well, making sure that when the truth came out, no one would believe me. They'd painted me as a confused old woman first, so anything I said could be dismissed as delusion. I called Patricia. I expected this, she said. We'll get ahead of it. I want you to see Dr. Sarah Morrison today. Emergency appointment. We'll have medical documentation proving you're of sound mind within 24 hours. Dr. Sarah Morrison's office was in a medical complex near the hospital, all soothing blues and grays. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The evaluation took 3 hours. Memory tests. Repeat these numbers backward. Remember these 3 words and tell me them again in 5 minutes. Reasoning puzzles. If all bloops are Razzies and all Razzies are Lazzies, are all bloops definitely Lazzies? Psychological assessments. Rate your mood on a scale of 1 to 10. Do you ever have thoughts of harming yourself or others? I answered everything honestly, even when it was hard. Even when she asked about my relationship with my son, and I had to fight back tears. At the end, Dr. Morrison put down her clipboard and smiled. Mrs. Pembroke, I can tell you with absolute confidence that your cognitive function is excellent. Above average for your age group, actually. Your memory is sharp. Your reasoning is sound. Your emotional state is appropriate given the circumstances. You're dealing with a traumatic family situation in a remarkably healthy way. So I'm not senile? I tried to joke, but it came out bitter. You're not even close to senile. You're a 73-year-old woman with the cognitive function of someone 20 years younger. I'll have my full report ready by tomorrow morning, but I wanted to tell you in person. There is no evidence of dementia, cognitive decline, or any mental impairment whatsoever. I cried then. Not from sadness, but from relief. They couldn't take this from me. They couldn't paint me as crazy or incompetent. I had proof. Patricia sent a cease and desist letter that afternoon, threatening a defamation lawsuit if they continued their social media campaign. The posts came down within 2 hours. But the damage was done. The seed had been planted. Some people would always wonder if the sweet young couple had been right about the difficult old woman. I was exhausted, physically, emotionally, spiritually drained. Every sound made me jump. I'd catch myself crying at random moments, in the grocery store, in the shower, watching television. Sleep came in fits and starts, punctuated by nightmares of Alistair's face, of doors closing, of houses that disappeared when I reached for them. Patricia noticed during our phone call. "Honora, take a few days. Step back from this. Let me handle the legal proceedings. You need to rest." She was right. I booked 4 nights at a bed and breakfast in Carmel, 2 hours south. No phone calls about the case. No checking email. No social media. Just the ocean, good books, and the space to remember who I was before all of this. I needed to rebuild my strength, because I knew the real battle was still coming. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, and the peculiar smell of old paper and tension. Judge Martha Hendricks presided, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every manipulation humanity could devise. Patricia sat beside me in her navy suit, perfectly composed. Across the aisle, Alistair and Philippa sat with their attorney, David Brennan. Philippa wore pearls and a conservative dress, playing the part of the wronged daughter-in-law. Alistair looked ill, his face gray and drawn. Behind us, Dorothy and half my knitting circle filled a row. Their presence steadied me. Judge Hendricks reviewed the documents in silence, then looked up. "This is a straightforward unlawful detainer case. Mrs. Pembroke, you're seeking to evict the defendants from property you own. Mr. Brennan, your clients contest this?" Brennan stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We argue that Mrs. Pembroke lacks standing to evict our clients, as they have an equitable ownership interest based on 5 years of payments and $40,000 in property improvements. Furthermore, Your Honor, we have serious concerns about Mrs. Pembroke's mental capacity to pursue this action." There it was, the nuclear option. Patricia rose smoothly. "Your Honor, we anticipated this desperate argument." She handed documents to the bailiff. The property deed, showing Mrs. Pembroke as sole owner. A cognitive assessment from Dr. Sarah Morrison, board-certified geriatric psychiatrist, dated 1 week ago, showing Mrs. Pembroke scored in the 95th percentile for her age group. Bank records showing irregular below-market payments. And this, she presented another document. A forensic handwriting analysis of a document the defendants created, claiming Mrs. Pembroke signed away her ownership rights. The signature is a forgery, Your Honor, created after the eviction notice was served. The courtroom went silent. Brennan's face paled. "Your Honor, that's a serious accusation." "It's a serious crime," Patricia interrupted. "We filed a police report. The district attorney is reviewing it for potential charges." Judge Hendricks studied the forensic report, her expression darkening. "Mr. Brennan, do your clients have any legitimate documentation showing an ownership stake or formal rental agreement?" Brennan hesitated. "Not formal documentation, Your Honor, but years of payments and improvements create an implied—" "That's not what I asked. Do you have documentation?" "No, Your Honor." "Did your clients forge Mrs. Pembroke's signature on this care agreement?" Philippa stood abruptly. "Your Honor, my mother-in-law is elderly and confused. She's forgotten signing many documents. We have 3 physicians willing to testify." "Sit down, Mrs. Pembroke." The judge's voice could have frozen fire. "I have a cognitive assessment here from a respected specialist. Do any of your 3 physicians have recent examination records of Mrs. Pembroke?" Silence. "I thought not. Mrs. Pembroke, did you or did you not sign this document?" "I did not, Your Honor. I've never seen it before in my life." The judge turned to Alistair, who'd been silent throughout. "Mr. Pembroke, do you have anything to say?" Alistair looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since that night in the kitchen. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." "Alistair, shut up," Philippa hissed. "No." He turned to her, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years, my son's spine. "No more. We forged that document. You forged it. You told me it was necessary to protect ourselves, but it was fraud. We lied, and we threatened Mom with conservatorship to scare her into giving up her own property. Jennifer's face went white, then scarlet. You idiot. Enough. Judge Hendrix's gavel cracked like thunder. I've heard everything I need to hear. Mrs. Pembroke is the sole legal owner. The defendants have no lease, no ownership interest, and no legal right to remain. Furthermore, they've admitted to forgery. She looked at Alistair and Philippa with undisguised disgust. I'm granting the eviction. You have 72 hours to vacate. I'm also ordering you to pay Mrs. Pembroke's legal fees, $22,000. And I'm recommending the district attorney pursue criminal charges for forgery and fraud. The gavel fell. I'd won. 72 hours later, I stood on the sidewalk watching sheriff's deputies supervise the removal of their belongings. 2 moving trucks sat in the driveway. Philippa directed movers with military precision, refusing to look at me. Alistair moved like a man in a dream. Patricia stood beside me. How does it feel? Strange, I admitted. But right. As the last box was loaded, Philippa approached me. You won. Congratulations. You got your house back. But you know what you don't have? A son, a family. You're going to die alone, and no one will care. I met her eyes. I'd rather die alone with my dignity than live surrounded by people who see me as disposable. She left. Alistair lingered, looking at the house, then at me. Mom, is there any chance that I'll forgive you? I finished. Maybe someday, but not today. If you leave Philippa, get therapy, and become the man I raised you to be, then maybe. But if you stay with her, we're done forever. From the car, Philippa honked. Alistair looked at me one last time, then walked away. I watched them drive off. Are you okay? Patricia asked. I will be. 6 months later, I sat on the porch of my cottage in Santa Cruz, watching the sunrise turn the ocean pink and gold. The house had sold for $495,000. After paying off everything, I'd cleared $275,000, enough to buy this cottage outright and have savings left over. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Mom, it's Alistair. New phone. I left Philippa 4 months ago. Been in therapy 3 times a week. Got a job teaching at community college. I'm not asking to be back in your life. Just wanted you to know I'm trying. I'm sorry. I love you. I read it twice. Didn't respond immediately. Put the phone down and sipped my coffee. Later that night, I picked it up again. I'm glad you're getting help. That's the first step. Don't contact me again for 6 months. If you're still in therapy, still single, still trying, we can talk then. Maybe. I added, I mean it about 6 months. Not 5, not 5.5. 6. Respect that boundary or we're done. I hit send. Gerald appeared at the door with 2 glasses of wine. We'd met at an art class 3 months ago. Him with his architectural sketches, me with my terrible watercolors. He was 75, kind, and understood that I needed space to heal. Penny for your thoughts? He asked. I smiled. Just thinking about second chances. Are you for them or against them? I'm for earned ones that come with work and time and proof. We toasted as the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of forgiveness and freedom. I spent 73 years taking care of everyone else. The rest of my life was mine, and I was going to live it on my terms,